Welcome back to the Bryan Devore Connection. I'm your host, Bryan Devore. What are the red flags when a loved one who lives far away needs some help? It's a critical issue, especially as our parents are aging and a lot of us are not living near where our parents or our loved ones are. Well, here to talk about those 3 red flags is my friend Tina Buchanan with Visionary Care Consultants. Tina, how are you doing today?
Great. Nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So you have a wonderful, unique business model, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and especially talking about the 3 red flags. Yes. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this line of work.
Sure. Thank you for asking. So I'm a social worker by trade. I always thought I wanted to work with children. I learned very quickly that that was not for me. But what happened is in my undergrad, they placed me for my internship in a nursing home, and I went kicking and screaming, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. So through there, I continued my studies, and I have a master's in social work. I've done skilled nursing. I've also worked for home health agencies. And one day I just said, you know, there's got to be more that I can do to help people besides helping them from afar and for short term. You know, working in a nursing home, it's very short term. It can be very challenging to really make change that I wanted to make. And so in 2017, I went out on my own and I never turned back.
That's great.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You learned pretty quickly that kids weren't for you in that respect, but the other end of the spectrum, taking care of seniors. And what's nice about your background is you've done it all. You've got all the experience of all the different sort of facets of where people are placed in, you know, their care continuum, so to speak. So how did that inform your decision to form your company? And tell us about your company and how it operates.
I think it formed my decision because I think that there's a gap in our healthcare system in which things are very short term and it's passed on from one person to the next person. And I knew I wanted to be the person that could really help them through the trajectory of that, because that's where you can really facilitate long-term change and stability and really create a quality of life for your clients and the families who are struggling through that, because the families are the ones that are caught up in the middle of the medical jargon and things like that. So that was my driving factor, is really wanting to see long term. So a little bit about my company. We provide concierge care management services. And what that basically means is we're healthcare advocates for our clients and for our family members. We mostly serve older adults. We do have about 30% of our population that are not older adults and they have special needs. They could have a mental illness. They could have a learning disability. It's one of our niches that I'm very proud of. And we have a very diverse team. We all come from a different background. So we have a nurse. We have a social worker who's super strong in family mediation. We also have mental health. So we really collaborate as a team. And I think what's really unique about us is that because people's problems and challenges navigating this are so complex, you not only get, you know, your care manager, but you get the whole team of experts, which I think is really unique, is that you get what you need.
Yeah, I love that model. It's fantastic. A lot of times I use the analogy of when adult children are dealing with the care of their family members, usually their parents. They don't know what to do. They've never done it before. The analogy is sort of like a divorce, you know. I didn't know any divorce attorneys until I went through my own divorce, and then this whole world opened to me of what's available. So people don't know the jargon. They don't know what they should and shouldn't know, you know, and who they should be talking to.
Yeah.
But having a care manager really helps guide them through the process so they're not alone doing it.
Exactly.
So I love that. Now, a lot of your clients are probably not very close to their families geographically.
Correct.
You may have people you're taking care of here, but the kids live in Seattle or the East Coast or whatever. And they need to know what maybe some of the red flags are that something's going on. So this is even before they hire you, as they're dealing with their loved ones. So you have 3 red flags for the 3 biggest red flags that something's going on. The first one we talked about was phone calls, change in phone calls. Talk about that.
Yeah, this one's very interesting because it could be multiple things, but what we've seen, some of the red flags is maybe you used to talk to your mom every day on the phone, and now you can't get her to answer the phone, right? So that could be a problem. So change in the frequency, or they're reaching out every day, and you used to talking to them, once every 6 months. That's a big change, right? Take notice that that's different. The other thing is if you're talking to them and they seem more confused, or they're repetitive, talking about the same things over and over again, that can indicate there's a change in cognition going on. And the last one is mood, right? So maybe they have a change in mood when you're talking to them. Maybe they seem very irritable or seem unmotivated, and they're telling you they're not eating or they're not sleeping. That could be an indicator of something going on, such as depression or maybe isolation, which is a huge one that we've seen throughout the pandemic and beyond.
Right. So I think the critical thing that I picked up from that red flag was having the awareness and really being clued into what's going on, because I think we get tied up in our busy daily lives. Yeah. Oh, I need to call my mom. I call her. I don't really notice something's going on, or maybe I notice it, but it's fleeting, and I move on to my life. But I think with our older adults, we really need to key into those changes that are going on, and maybe see if there's a pattern of it, and so forth. The other thing with respect to calls, the other next red flag is calls from maybe doctors or other people involved in your parents' lives.
Yeah, so we have a lot of older adults who their children are involved from afar, right? And they are the emergency contact for all of the physicians, maybe other people in their lives if they have caregivers or things like that. And they're the ones that start to get bombarded with all the phone calls of, hey, mom missed a doctor's appointment today, or hey, dad's in the hospital, he fell and broke a hip, or skilled nursing. So getting multiple calls from the medical system itself, doctors, physicians, dental, hospital, skilled nursing, can become overwhelming very, very quick for the family member. But that also gives you an indicator as the caregiver, the family caregiver from afar, that, hey, things may not be going so smoothly at home if I'm getting all these calls. What's happening?
Right. And I would think depending on the type of call, it could be something where, okay, you maybe take a couple of these calls, but some of these calls, it only takes one.
Yeah.
And you say, whoa. I have a client who I'm talking to the son, one of the sons, the other one lives out of the country. He got the call saying dad is now in the hospital. And it's the first exposure he had to his dad having any issues, because he lives back east. And now he's out here, and now he's like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. He moved his dad back to the East Coast. But he got that call.
Yeah.
It only took one in that case, but there may be others as well. The third red flag, financial issues. And we're talking about how a lot of times the adult children are helping with the finances, or taking care of finances, but they see some things are not what they should be.
Yeah, we find a lot of our families from afar, they are involved, like I said, on different levels, but some of them are involved in, overseeing the finances. The person may still have capability of really managing them, but they have their eyes on what's going on. And they're noticing that, extra charges are being spent, and they're not sure, if their loved one realizes how much money's in the bank account. They're seeing shutoff notices come through, or other red flags like that. And so that one, we've seen a huge increase in financial issues and financial abuse and scams, particularly since the pandemic started. And so I think really paying attention, if you are involved in the finances from afar, or even if you're not, to maybe start asking questions about, how's it going? Do you need help here? Things like that, which I know I'm kind of jumping ahead because we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But financial issues are really a red flag that something could be going on with cognition, a change in physical ability, right? Maybe all of a sudden they're hiring all these people to do these great things like a gardener and all of these things, but those are indicators that there could be a bigger issue that they're not talking about.
Right. And it's so easy, unfortunately, for seniors to be taken advantage of. And they're not going to necessarily share that they were taken advantage of. In fact, they're more likely not to. So if they got, someone convinced them or broke into their bank account and took $20,000 out, they're not going to call up their daughter and say, guess what just happened, you know? So you have to be kind of clued in, ask the questions as best you can. All right, so these are some red flags, but now you have not necessarily helpless, but someone back east, a family member who, they have their own lives. They're the sandwich generation. They're dealing with their children as well. How can a visionary care consultant come into play to help them through this process?
We definitely can. And the first place we start is we have a phone call, and it's a free phone call with the family member or a caregiver, someone who's involved in making the decisions, and just hearing what's going on and leading them to understand that there's resources available and that we can be the boots on the ground here. What I like to say, and I've heard you say this before, is visionary care consultants and other care managers, we act as the quarterback. And we're bringing in the players, and we know the players on the field, but it's on us to determine like who gets the ball next or who to bring in, who to pass it to. And we vetted all of them. And so we really just let them know that there is help out there, that they don't have to fly back and forth. I think the biggest thing is that we are a concierge service, so it does cost money, and that can be a barrier for some people. But what we've seen is that we save people a lot of time and money, right? Which time is money. A lot of our families, before we get involved, they're flying out here. Once they see that red flag, they're coming out here maybe once a month, and they're taking time off work. They're having to buy plane tickets. It's straining relationships. So the problems on the surface are bigger than they know, right? But we know what we know, and they don't know that. And so, but once they know that, oh my gosh, you people exist, I think is the biggest thing, because care management and healthcare advocacy is not something that easily can be explained until you've seen it or gone through it. And it's not really out there. People don't talk about it that much, like home care, right? Most people call and go, I need home care. So just really listening to them and having them understand that there are people like us that can help. Really, really, in that first 30 minutes, we get so much done, and they feel so much relief because they've already been like, how am I going to do this from New York and California? Knowing that we can do it for them brings them so much relief, even in 30 minutes.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it's an amazing, overwhelming experience when they're having to deal with this. And a lot of times the parents haven't done planning for themselves, and so they're having to step in. The adult children are stepping in and sort of taking over those things. And then, like you said, the other players that you have to bring in. What if their trust isn't updated? Right. Their financial situation isn't updated? I'm working with one of your consultants about, the sale of a home as they're transitioning into a senior living community. So there's so many things that are unpacked usually after that first phone call, and it's not just one thing. It's this, oh, what about that, and that, and that. But they've never had to navigate it before. They've never had a loved one go through this.
And they're not thinking about it, right? They're thinking crisis, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed out. And our goal is never to overwhelm them more, but when we start to get them thinking about like these other things, right? It's really to help them. Okay, we got to start somewhere, but there's all these other things that come into place, such as the finances, the health, the disability, the resources. What do things cost? What is the long-term goal of your mom or your dad? And how is that going to play into this? And how are they going to be able to afford it? So we start unraveling all of these things that they haven't even really thought about because they're just being hit with these red flags and they don't know what to do and they're just stuck.
Right. Well, ultimately what it comes down to is you provide peace of mind. And there's not much of a price that you can put on a peace of mind. So if you have a loved one that you are taking care of, or maybe some of these red flags are coming up, contact information is on the screen right now for Visionary Care Consultants, phone number, website as well. You can learn more about Tina and her team and the wonderful work they do to help guide loved ones through this transition in their lives as their parents are also transitioning as well. Tina,
Yes.
thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.